smoke is just billowing out of the main casino area. The palm trees alongside the building are so hot they've caught on fire and are burning at this time. Metro units have got the area surrounded. Paramedic units are on the scene trying to help people. There's going to be probably a number of people suffering from smoke inhalation. Security guards from the hotel are scampering everywhere, trying to keep people back and away from the fire. The fire department seems to be getting somewhat of a handle on it, but there is still a lot of flames coming out of the hotel and the main front entrance area of the hotel, and of course that dark smoke rising up above the city. We have people all the way up to the roof of the MGM asking for help. You can hear the voices in the background and waiting to be rescued, trying to get away from it.
Okay, thank you, 00. We have another report about to come in, and I think as soon as I regain my composure, I'm gonna do something I haven't done in a long time, man. I'm gonna go say a few prayers. Okay? We'll be back in 60 seconds.
You know, I think a lot of us said prayers that day, and that day was actually 45 years ago. You know, I don't normally come down here to the Strip, but I made an exception to come and recognize an event that not only changed Las Vegas, but it changed the lives of those involved. The MGM fire occurred on the morning of November 21st, 1980, 45 years ago. The facts surrounding that tragic event are well documented, and that's not what this story is about. Instead, I want to share my personal memories of that day, what I saw, what I experienced, and the roles played by many of my colleagues and friends. At the time, I was the chief news photographer for Channel 3 News in Las Vegas, and I also worked part-time for Mercy Ambulance. Those two jobs often crossed paths, but never more dramatically than they did on that morning. My wife, Kathy, and I were awakened by a phone call from Hank Tester, our assignment editor at Channel 3. He told me fire at the MGM, and it sounds big. By the way, Hank's still in TV news today, working in Florida, one of the best reporters and anchors I've ever known. All of us news photographers were on call back then. We had take-home vehicles and gear ready to respond to what we called spot news incidents. This photo from TV Guide showed most of our team at the time. I'm kneeling in the front right corner, and that's Gene Moreland on the front left. More about Gene in just a moment. I, of course, told Kathy, who worked part-time for Mercy Ambulance and full-time in the ER at Sunrise Hospital, and we both rushed out the door. I headed directly to the fire, and it was a Friday, her day off from Sunrise, so she headed to Mercy. At the time, we had an apartment at Twain and Valley View, which is just west of the Strip and just a few blocks away from the MGM. As soon as Kathy and I stepped out the door, you could smell the smoke in the air. It was already heavy. And I glanced over and looked at the MGM literally in disbelief, because there was just thick black smoke billowing up into the air. And it sort of reminded me at the time of an old locomotive that was getting started. I remember as I was driving down Valley View here that Hank Tester called me on the radio. He told me that Gene Moreland was already on scene and that he was calling in all the other reporters and cameramen. But I couldn't help fixate over here to the MGM. Granted, the Rio wasn't here. Caesar's Palace didn't have their tower up, so it was sort of a direct view of the MGM. And, you know, it was emotional. You just couldn't believe that this was happening. But like everybody else that had a job to do that day, you sort of put on your game face and make it work and think about all that stuff after you're done. It only took me about 5 minutes, maybe less, to get here. And as I was heading down Flamingo, I looked ahead and I could see that it was already jam-packed with emergency vehicles. So I pulled right into the Dunes parking lot, which is basically where the Bellagio fountains sit today. I parked, grabbed my gear, and started shooting as I walked. Eventually, I took a position on the Flamingo side, while Gene stayed up front near the porte-cochere. So when I first got here, I came up onto this driveway, which I'd been many times before, and I was shooting specifically down onto Flamingo Road, where all the emergency vehicles were, and I had my back towards the hotel. All of a sudden, I heard a large crash, and just a few feet away, it turned out to be a chair that someone had thrown out of one of the windows. By then, Flamingo Road was a solid line of fire trucks, police cars, and ambulances. And the noise, well, it was overwhelming. The roar of the diesel engines of the fire trucks at high idle. the chop of the blades from the helicopters overhead, and the echo of two-way radios screaming nonstop. But through all that chaos, I remember something else. People passing me and quietly crying as they flooded out the emergency exits. While I was shooting near one of those exits, a few people ran out yelling that there was a woman that had collapsed in the stairwell and needed help. I looked around and realized I was the only one here. So I made the decision to put down my camera and I went in. The minute I stepped away from the light of the doorway, it immediately became dark and smoky. There was still a steady line of people coming down, but they'd sort of emerge out of the darkness and the smoke, just like you'd imagine cars coming out of a fog bank. I did yell out, "Did you see a lady down?" And I got a response, "Yeah, just keep going." I think it was about 5 floors up and I found her. She was barely conscious and unable to walk, so I picked her up and we started back down, one very slow and careful step at a time. When I finally made it outside, my camera gear was still sitting exactly where I'd left it. And I remember saying to myself, thank God. I spotted the county fire rescue unit and took her over where a nurse was working with Dr. Elias Ghanem. He was a well-known local physician and actually worldwide known for being Elvis's doctor. They were treating several patients on the ground. I then retrieved my gear and went back to work. Throughout that morning, I crossed paths with several of my colleagues from Mercy Ambulance. We sort of exchanged quick nods, but nobody really had time to stop. My best friend, Rick DaCosta, who would later spend a full career as a firefighter-paramedic with the Clark County Fire Department, was working Mercy that day. He and his partner, Nancy Martin, were just wrapping up a 24-hour shift at what we called Sub 11. It was a small construction-like trailer behind the Sands Hotel that had 2 beds, no frills. Rick later told me that he heard an unusual number of sirens heading south down the strip. He looked out and he saw a North Las Vegas fire truck racing past. Not normal. He stepped to the other side of the trailer, looked out the window, and saw the smoke. As he and Nancy were preparing to respond, the phone rang. It was Mercy Dispatch Supervisor Carolyn Moore.
I got to work about 6:45 that morning, because my shift at that time was 7 to 3, and all of a sudden we were getting called back to the MGM. Apparently we had been there one time and it canceled, and we had a crew that was at the substation at the Sands Hotel. And they told me they saw smoke, and about that time we got the first call. So that started our day off. My day ended at about 2 o'clock the following morning. I ran home, took a shower, changed clothes, and came back to work, and I was at work until the next day about 6 o'clock in the evening.
Incidentally, Rick's partner Nancy Martin went on to become a lawyer and a doctor. Meanwhile, back at Mercy headquarters, Kathy had arrived, and she jumped in to help Carolyn in dispatch.
Crews came on duty. We clocked them in and out, handed out supplies, took the calls. If we needed to go to the restroom, we took a hand pack with us and answered the crews from there. She and office manager Debbie Galt started calling every available crew. But they discovered that not all the ambulances were available to put the crews into. So Kathy and one of my old high school buddies, Dennis Nolan, who actually recruited me to join Mercy, took a unit code 3 to Godden Ford to pick up another ambulance that was in the shop. They did, and within minutes, those units were back in service and headed straight to the MGM.
Good evening. At least 75 people have died today in a fire in the biggest hotel in Las Vegas. Another 300 were injured.
Ironically, Kathy remembered taking countless calls from media around the world seeking information about the fire and response. My buddy Dennis went on to become a nationwide leader in EMS and served for years as a Nevada state senator. And my beloved wife, Kathy, who is approaching her 47th year in Clark County EMS, currently working at AMR Medic West, Las Vegas. Mercy Paramedic Supervisor Dan Netsky, one of the first paramedics in the state of Nevada, remembered that day well.
Started transporting patients by the ambulance full, as many as 13, 14 patients in one ambulance at a time. And most all these patients had smoke inhalation. The difficult part was giving oxygen to all of them because they were passing the mask around. And they all spoke Spanish, because most of them were from Mexico. A side note to that is that I walked into the Barbary Coast, where I was directed and I saw this guy standing there in a plaid jacket, and he was leaning over a patient, talking to him, taking care of him. I put my hand on his shoulder, and he stood up, turned around, and lo and behold, it was the doctor I worked for in Hawaii. And he just happened to be in Las Vegas visiting.
Just one of many examples that it's a small world. Some of the best photographs I've ever seen of that day were taken by Scott Gould. He was a paramedic from Ohio that had just interviewed for a job at Mercy the day before. Scott woke up to the sound of sirens, saw the smoke, and without hesitation went straight to the fire from his hotel. He happened to have a small disposable camera in his pocket and was planning on taking some tourist-like Vegas shots before heading home. Instead, he captured history. At some point, Scott ran into David Scoff, the same Mercy supervisor who had interviewed him the day before. Scott asked him if he could help. Dave looked up and said, "Welcome to Mercy. You start today."
And I go, "Okay." And he says, "And don't worry, you'll get paid." Not like I was thinking about getting paid. So it turns out the MGM fire was my first day on the job. I packed up. I go back to Toledo to come out to Las Vegas. And as soon as I get home, there's a newspaper.
So Scott's first day became part of Las Vegas history. And he'd go on to have a long and distinguished career with the Los Angeles City Fire Department. Later that morning, I caught up with my regular reporting partner, Terry Kerr.
Hundreds of the 8,000 people inside ran to their balconies, again screaming, waving, and at least 3 people, not knowing what else to do apparently, jumped to their deaths. Others scrambled to the roof in hopes of being picked up by a helicopter. What should we do? What should we do? Was a common cry inside those hallways, we were told, people crawling blindly for doorways they could not see. It was death, absolute death in there, said another who escaped.
Incidentally, Terry became an attorney and served as a Nevada state senator. We went looking for some quick interviews. The first one I spotted was Bob Forbes of Mercy Ambulance.
A lot of people really panicky. There was hundreds of people just breaking the glass out from the windows, taking sheets and trying to come down from 30 floors down. Unfortunately, a lot of the people were Spanish speaking, and it was very difficult to communicate to them. They were so panicky, we were afraid they were going to jump from the 20th floor, and as you know, some of them did.
You mentioned you saw one.
We did. We saw one lady jump from the other side over here, about 8 floors down, and unfortunately, that was a very sad thing that happened.
Now, Bob wasn't just running Mercy, he was also an elected member of the Clark County School Board. Recognizing the need for mass transportation, he immediately ordered a fleet of school buses to the scene to help move ambulatory patients to the Las Vegas Convention Center, where doctors and nurses were setting up a triage center.
A disaster drill by all Clark County agencies was conducted by Tuesday, and if anything ever paid off, it paid off today. So far, we have a very unofficial total of those treated at local hospitals today. About 400 were taken to 5 hospitals. That is unofficial. 2 died on arrival or shortly after arrival at Sunrise Hospital. Many are being kept over tonight. Some are in intensive care because of cardiac problems brought on by smoke inhalation. Just about any vehicle with 4 wheels were used to bring victims in. Even Boulder City pitched in. I would like to comment here that, at least as far as this reporter is concerned, and I was born and raised here in Las Vegas, I have never seen the entire populace pitch in like they did today.
That they did. My friend, longtime executive, and community leader Rob McCoy, along with cameraman Ed Clark. Meanwhile, cameraman Rick Smith was assigned to wide establishing shots. He made his way to the adjacent Aladdin Hotel where he was granted roof access. From there, he took some of the most widely used video images of the MGM fire. Female medics, like my wife Kathy, were still a rarity in 1980. But at Mercy, there was an all-female paramedic crew known valley-wide as one of the best in Clark County. They called themselves the Trauma Mamas. Linda Matnetsky and Janet Smith.
At the time, I can remember running across the parking lot with a very heavy datascope in one hand and a jump bag in the other, and there were no more earplugs for getting in and out of the choppers because we spent the day in helicopters going up, going down into the hotel, bringing up bodies. Really, it became recovery after we transported all the people. Then it was the rest of the day was really recovery. But I can remember those first few moments and thinking, what am I doing? Where am I? This is a historical, weird, crazy, cataclysmic day in everyone's lives. So I do remember just being hit by the enormity of it. And then the little things, trying to carry bodies up and marking on their foreheads where we found them.
Admittedly, in somewhat of a roundabout way, I asked Bob Forbes if the Trauma Mamas could go on Channel 3 that night to appear in a live special report with my boss Steve Shore and talk about their experiences at the fire. He agreed, but as I found out later, he basically ordered them to go.
We were called and told we had to be on the news. We're going to be on the news, I don't know, 11, 10 o'clock, whatever time it was, I don't remember. But we had been there all day.
It was kind of like, is there a bathroom? Do we have to lift anything? Is it warm? We'll do it.
I really think things went really smoothly. I've never been involved in this large a scale of a disaster, and I think that things went very smoothly.
Matt?
Valley area hospitals were, extremely ready for any type of casualties that were coming in and prepared for, what was brought to them, and perhaps in the triaging and having a more of a centralized triage area where people were coming out. So the people, even if the people inside or the rescue people going in knew where they should be directing these people, as opposed to, going, from the Barbary Coast to the east side to the, west side of the building, just, trying to find these patients being all these different areas, as opposed to one centralized or two centralized areas.
Once again, I thank you all for appearing on the program with us this evening. I know it's very short notice, but I do appreciate you being on the program.
Both Matt and Janet went on to become nationwide leaders in EMS. The first firefighters that arrived that day came from Clark County Fire Station 11, which back in 1980 was located right here where this garage sits today. This video comes from a story that I shot with the firefighters and paramedics of that long-gone station.
This dispatch is for Engine 11.
It was just after the MGM reopened.
Report of fire in the building.
I spent about 3 shifts with them in their small, tucked-away station, hidden amid the very large and intimidating Las Vegas landscape. Over those days, I was able to capture a day in the life of the crew, and at the same time, a snapshot of Las Vegas in the early 80s. Like so many that morning, the crew from Station 11 was just wrapping up their 24-hour shift when the call came in, a fire in the deli. So the crew from Station 11 literally drove across Flamingo, and they entered the hotel at this entrance.
I was the first one in, and we were like in a row of ducks. We got down onto the casino floor and looked over, and that's when the fireball busted out of the deli. And we all turned around. Going from the first guy in line to the last one was like, God, I wish these guys
were you the last one in the line?
Yeah.
The flames chased them out the side doors in which they'd entered, and then the ball of fire continued across the casino floor. It blew through the front doors, engulfing the entrance in an explosion of heat and smoke.
We got heavy smoke coming out the front and the side entrance. Better take it up to Battalion 2, control, this is an Evolution 3.
When we got back out to the engine, we're pulling our heavy lines off to go in, and just then the luggage door blew open, and at the same time the end of the casino by the strip blew out, and looked down and saw the wall of fire down there, and then we got our stuff off and then went in and started fighting fire from the side of the building.
Among those responding that morning was veteran Mercy medic Alan Albatis.
So when we pulled in, I just got there in time to watch the overhang by Valet roll of fire and 2 palm trees burst into flame. Just at that moment that we made the turn. And it was just shuttling all day, back and forth, back and forth. Then they took us off of that to go through the hotel, Dr. Ravenholt, Florida Time, to confirm, and he'd leave a big X on the door with the number of fatalities in the room, or whether it was clear. So, yeah, long day.
Alan went on to join the Las Vegas Fire Department, but he stayed committed to his work as an artist, creating literal masterpieces celebrating firefighting. In 1986, I left Channel 3 to become a Metro police officer, and I was lucky enough to work with and become friends with many of the senior officers who had responded to the MGM fire. Two of them were Harry Christopher and Tom Mildren, who were officer pilots flying Metro's helicopter that day. And a third, Gary Sumption, served in the department's search and rescue unit.
And as we arrived, we realized the hotel was on fire, and it was a big fire. And the smoke was just so thick going up the sides of the hotel and coming out the vents on the roof that we just, at that point, assumed that the whole building was probably going to eventually be fully engulfed, and the people on the roof would have to be removed.
Mildren was working with Sergeant Harry Christopher, who was flying the helicopter at the time. Initially, they were using their PA system to communicate with people on the balconies.
I'm sorry, it's so hot. It's impossible for them to stay in there. That's what they're complaining about. They're telling us that it's just unbearably hot. They have to stay out on them balconies. There's nothing else they can do. All right, for the fire department, if they do get on the ledge, do not attempt to use any of those sheets or blankets to go to another floor. We checked with the housekeeping and that. They're not capable of holding a person going down a floor with them. Advise the people of that. Stay where you are. We'll bring them to you. No? Okay. There you go. Okay. No? Okay. Stay where you are. We'll bring them to you. The firemen will reach you. Do not attempt to jump. Stay back away from the windows.
When they noticed that people were gathering on the rooftop, Christopher landed the helicopter and Mildren got out.
And it was like a floodgate opened. The doors leading to the roof, people just started pouring out. They were, most of them were soot covered. They had this thick black goo around their mouths and noses, and it was, they had towels that they had gotten wet, and they were trying to breathe through them. And the smoke was really nasty. It was a thick, sooty smoke.
Right now I'm about to, we have two major groups on the hotel section of the rooms right now. There's a Metro helicopter and another helicopter landing on the roof, picking up people and taking them down to the ground.
And while I was loading our helicopter, I didn't realize what was happening to Paul's helicopter. They had just stormed it.
Paul was flying the Flight for Life helicopter and was one of the first to assist.
And so as Harry lifted off with ours, I looked over at Paul. And he was close enough to where I could see his expression on his face, and he was not happy. And the people were so full inside his helicopter that all I could see were people. And they were pushing his helicopter towards the edge. There were so many people pushing on the front bubble.
Helicopters played such a vital role that day, and this area right here actually became a makeshift airport. It was likely the second busiest in town.
The Valley Helicopter Service in Boulder City will be standing by with crews if you need more units.
Don't let them stand by no more. We need a helicopter here now. And that's open field to the south of the building. That's where the pony units are going to bring all the people, and there are some of them in pretty bad shape for smoke inhalation. We'd like to have people down there and an ambulance down there in the dirt field between the Aladdin and the MGM.
When the roof eventually emptied out, Tom went inside.
It was very eerie because all you had was a miner's light, and you're walking in a dark hotel, and when you'd come across bodies, it was tough.
I remember going down one hall, black, very dark, couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I'm carrying 2 oxygen tanks, trying to go down to a fireman who's got, and another rescue prayer guy who's got a person down. And I'm running as fast as I can in the dark, and I trip. When I hit the ground, I turned over and looked back. I couldn't see what I tripped over. And then I pick up the stuff and start to move, and I see 2 eyeballs, 2 eyes staring at me out of the dark. And it turned out it was a maid who was wearing a black uniform with her head with dark hair, and I just didn't see her. And I tripped over her body running down the hall. So you just get the shiver, you pick up, and you just take off again. It was a long day.
Sadly, many of the people I worked with and have mentioned are gone. And I never imagined I'd be here to recognize the 45th anniversary. The official death toll of the MGM Grand Fire is 85, though 2 others later passed away from injuries linked to the tragedy. It remains the deadliest event in Nevada's history, but it also led to sweeping safety reforms that transformed fire codes and building standards across the hotel industry. Growing up, my family always lived near the Strip. My dad was a drummer who at one time or another played in nearly every showroom in town. My mother, a talent agent. So, show business was simply part of our everyday life. I remember watching Caesar's Palace rise from the desert, followed by the MGM Grand, the crown jewel of Las Vegas when it opened in 1973. Years later, I'd work on various TV productions there, and when Kathy and I met, the Grand became part of our story too. We'd go on dates there, have dinner, see a movie, catch a highlight game, or sometimes just stroll through the shops, admiring the displays of MGM movie memorabilia. And don't forget that quick snapshot with Leo the Lion. Ironically, in 1984, I found myself standing back in the middle of Flamingo, shooting yet another story at the MGM. Although it was serious, it was nothing compared to that day in November of 1980. Of course, it would later become Bally's, and today it's known as the Horseshoe. But to me, it will always be the Grand.